everyone, we're live here at the Hive. Today I'm going to be talking about ADHD as an asset, especially for entrepreneurs. And I'm going to do a quick shout out to Martin Pringle for sponsoring our technology. As always, we got Ashlyn here in the house. Thank you guys. And to DSM Accounting for sponsoring our coffee, which I saw some of you run to. It was so cool. So thanks to them. To ICT Lifestyle Management, Kristen, for being our lunch sponsor today. This is the first of our new lunch and learns, which will be once in a month, that we're hoping to have larger and also catered by the wonderful chef, Miss Mary Rue, who's in the kitchen. Thank you, Mary. And thank you, Kristen. So this topic made me a little bit nervous, so I invited some of my friends who I've had conversations with about ADHD, who either maybe have it themselves or have it. So thank you guys for being here, especially, and to everybody for being here. I'm going to use my clicker. So the first thing I want to say is we need to do introductions. We're not going to move the camera around to introduce everybody just for simplicity purposes. But if you would just go around the room and just say your name and your business. We don't have time for the whole such a large group, but just name and business name. So.
Hi, Valerie Marty. I'm with the Movement Experts. I'm busy for healthy lifestyle. Hi, I'm Shani at Martin Greenville.
Dylan Hinton, I'm an occupational therapist at Love Industry and co-owner of Truck Stop.
Amy Robinson, Preston Townsend, ICT.
Angie Higgins, Color Windows and Doors. Ashley Abadini, Abadini Social.
Dawn Kolaski of Dawn Design.
Shea International. Gail Boyd, Lady.
I'm Shirley Moore with New York.
Sarah Kirby Clifford.
Mary Boo.
I'm Jenny Bowers. I'm a photographer and co-roofing.
Jamie Gurnett, I own J. Gurnett Strategic Business.
Awesome. And for those of you watching online, you can just go to the event RSVPs and you can see everything on the profile as well. Okay, so overview, we're going to define ADHD first. We're going to talk about challenges, diagnosis, my personal story, the benefits of it, how it relates to entrepreneurship, and how to turn it into an asset. So the very first thing, and grab a seat wherever you like. So what really is ADHD? So attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. The actual definition is it's a neurodevelopmental disorder making it difficult to focus on tasks and control impulsive behaviors. But you have probably thought of this as like the thing that little boys look at in school, right? And that was kind of what I always thought of it as, even as a teacher, because that's who got diagnosed. That's who I had special support in place for how I needed to accomplish. I almost never had little girls in my class diagnosed as ADHD. And every definition on the internet is the fact that it's difficult to focus and there's impulse control. And so if you, sometimes we're able to focus extremely well on a task, which 80% can, if they're passionate about, then I can focus well, so that's not something I have a problem with. Or if you, you weren't like hyperactive and moving around all the time, but your brain was, maybe you thought, oh, well, I'm not hyperactive and moving around all the time. That would be a concern of mine. And also, you're not really a problem for the teachers, right, and the parents in that way, and so they're maybe not going to diagnose them. We'll get more into that later. But I really love the definition of ADHD. So I like to think of it as really more people that are struggling with executive functioning skills, and they lack normal levels. Okay, to me, those make more sense when you're defining it. And so, how does that really play out in real life? If you have ADHD, you have difficulty with motivation, with set direction, with time and schedule management, with keeping your space organized, with dealing with frustration and setbacks, with emotions and behavior, with details, and with paying attention, especially when you find something boring. And you might often zone out or get distracted, misplace or forget the things that you said you would do, procrastinate, hyper-focus, make impulsive decisions, and feel overwhelmed. So that's kind of the in real life. And then on these statements sound familiar, so I'm going to have, there should be a couple strips. There won't be enough for everybody to read one, but if you'll flip and whoever has number 1, if you would read it, go ahead and flip over all the strips on your table, and if there is a number 1 on the table, will somebody read it? Okay, go ahead.
My daily life feels frantic or I've forgotten something.
Okay. So my daily life feels frantic because I'm late or I've forgotten something. Okay, 2.
I jump from one topic to another in conversation.
I drink a lot of caffeine.
4,
I usually complete things at the last minute.
5,
Sometimes I feel moody and depressed for no reason.
6,
To feel frustrated.
7,
It's hard for me to be patient.
8.
People say I overreact sometimes. Whatever.
9,
I feel exhausted when I get home from work.
10,
It's so hard for me to stay organized.
11,
Life feels overwhelming sometimes. To prepare for something important, I start with 4.
13,
I always seem to say or do the wrong thing.
14,
I have been stopped for speaking.
15,
Determined to do well but can't keep it up. Are you watching?
and was it 16? Was there 16? Okay, I think I got through all of them. I find those statements, those are directly from a self-diagnosis form. And so I found the statements to be way more helpful than just, struggle with motivation. The statements really hit home for me personally. Now, of course, does everybody in the world struggle with some of these things some of the time? Yes. And the difference is that, people with ADHD struggle with these on a daily basis, multiple times a day, often. And so I find one of the most invalidating things since my diagnosis has been everybody struggles with that. Or maybe everybody's a little bit ADHD. It's super invalidating because it's just not true. And it invalidates the things you struggle with in a more extreme way. So you may have identified with some of those statements that it doesn't necessarily mean you have ADHD. So just for that to clarify. But do some of them sound familiar to some people? And so you might be thinking, that does sound like me, so why was I never diagnosed as a kid if I do have ADHD? Well, we're going to talk about boys and men versus girls and women. So 50 to 75% of women and girls with ADHD do not have it. 50 to 75%. And it's because they go consistently under-identified and underdiagnosed. Girls tend to be more inattentive, daydreaming, they might be shy, they might have low self-esteem. Boys tend to be hyperactive and impulsive, and that tends to get in the way of things, right? So parents and teachers tend to bring them in for diagnosis more than they would girls. Boys get diagnosed 3 times more than girls because of their externalized symptoms, and girls are more subtle and harder to identify because a lot of their symptoms are internalized, and they have developed better coping strategies. So you may have ADHD, but no one would know it because you mask it so well. Because you are staying up until 2 a.m. working on a paper to turn in. You're not the kid that's constantly turning in. Oh, I never turn things in late. But what do you have to go through that is more extreme than what other people would have to go through to make that happen? And so, hold on. Okay. Skip on the slide a little bit. So the downside to this, is that you're more likely familiar. You are 4 times more likely if you have ADHD to develop depression. And that's with ADHD in general, tend to be even more likely to develop depression, especially if they have ADHD. And so you're probably familiar with messages like, don't be so lazy. If you cared about me, you wouldn't be blank. down this. Why are you so emotional / sensitive? And the real problem is that you don't have the same with motivation and rewards, so you've been micro failures all day long, every day, your entire life. And you also have rejection, which basically means like you're any kind of criticism and rejection. And you also likely have emotional dysregulation, which makes it really hard for you to know you have like big emotions come up. If you've internalized all of these micro failures, because who wouldn't, right? If you're failing all the time, is what it feels like. And then your internal monologue becomes, and I hear this so often in my friends. I don't hear it in myself as much, right? Because it's internal. But I hear my friends say these things about themselves. You know, I'm so lazy. I'm so stupid. I'm so like I'm crazy. I must be crazy because I'm so emotional. Like I'm crazy. And so you're saying these things to yourself internally, even if you don't really know. I taught myself one time when I was in my first marriage that I scratched something on the floor when I was moving some furniture. I scratched the floor and I literally got down and stupid, like people so mad at me, and I was like went into this like shame spiral, you know, of like hating on myself over an accident. And then you say you to quit being so sensitive. And so it's even harder for women, like I said. This is a quote from Dr. Kathleen Najee, director of the Chesapeake ADHD Center, and she says, society has certain expectations we place on women, and ADHD often makes them harder to function. They're supposed to be the organizer, primary parent at home. Women are expected to remember birthdays and anniversaries and do laundry and keep track of events. This is all really hard for somebody with ADHD. It kind of leads into more like a failure because I'm not even a good mom. I'm not even a good partner. I can't even like do the things that I'm supposed to be able to do. And I found that messages like that talk about men being lazy or not knowing how to handle things around the house always make me feel super ashamed because I've always been the one who has a hard time with that stuff, and I've always been the one who is so on top of everything. And so I think that kind of messaging, almost like similar to like different, body messaging that my other one kind of brings me. And then, it's really hard to succeed. It can feel really hard to succeed with your ADHD. You see that weakness rather than an asset. Business and career isn't aligned with your strengths. When there's no passion, when it doesn't feel authentic, when you're trying to use neurotypical strategies, things that work or don't have when you're comparing yourself to neurotypical people, when you're bullying yourself rather than being an ally, when you aren't investing in yourself, if you let imposter syndrome, when you chase every new idea, when you're scared of failure, when you have unrealistic goals, when you try to people please, or when you let self-doubt sabotage you. And so I promise there's going to be to all of this. So I want to tell you about my story real quick. So this is me, me and my daughter Viva back in 2015, when we had to move back home to Wichita. We had moved cross country multiple times, and I had postpartum depression, in college, and struggled with depression as a new mom. And I got to the point where I was suicidal. And I had to move to Dallas, Texas, and my husband was working a different shift than me. And so we literally had an hour overlap in the morning and an hour overlap at night. And other than that, I was a single dad. And I was working and he was working, and it was just exhausting. And so he used to say he was afraid what he was going to come home to because he knew I was that depressed. And so he let me with my daughter. I took care of my backpack on the back, and I ran home. I ran away home. And he packed up our whole life and moved us back to Wichita. We lived with my parents for about 8 months, and got our life back together. After in Wichita, and I got a job. I left teaching, got a job in marketing, and then I had a extremely emotionally toxic workplace environment. came home, I cried every single day, multiple times a day at work. I came home utterly mentally and physically exhausted, and I am so grateful for that job. That job showed me how horrible my marriage was. Because I had always loved my job. I was a teacher, and I had always been so lit up and so happy that when I came home, I feel it. And then my marriage or worse, I started thinking like this boss who is emotionally and verbally abusing me, like tells me he loves me more than in a weird way, but in like a positive, healthy way. So that was the biggest gift of my life. And I had a partner who was not very understanding. He actually was diagnosed with ADHD as a kid, but we didn't know that's what I had. And that was probably the biggest struggle in our marriage. Is he was very critical and very, hard on me. And so the thing about ADHD is you do have to have had it your whole life. So you have to have had symptoms prior to age 12. You can develop. It's something you've always had. And so when I look back to when I was a kid, I was always procrastinating. I would be up at 2 a.m. in tears, working on math problems I didn't understand. My friend was a valedictorian, and she helped me through my science classes. I was amazing at English, and I was amazing at so many other subjects, but I always got A's. I was completely in classes, and I always turned my homework in on time. And so nobody would ever know that, and it also, ADHD typically is, my parents also, I think, ADHD, and so they didn't know any different. They didn't know how to help me because these are things they've always struggled with too. And I was always super impatient about things. Like if I bought something, I had to finish it in the car. I couldn't even wait till I got home. I was super impatient waiting on my family to finish dinner. If we were at a restaurant, I would be like, everything happening in the restaurant, like waiting for everybody else to finish. I would zone out when people were talking to me about things I wasn't interested in. Everyone always said to me, my sensitive. I was so sensitive. I would cry all the time about different things, get my feelings hurt constantly, and they would always say that to me. They would always say, like, "You're being lazy today." Sitting on the couch and not cleaning the house or doing something on a weekend that I needed to. I had extreme emotions over transition, like friends. If friends moved away, I had a friend of a mother of mine literally call my mom. She was worried that I was going to kill myself over her moving because I was so upset over it. I wasn't myself, but I was just very dramatic and very overly sensitive. I was always late for things. I always had extreme exhaustion, just exhausted all the time. People were constantly asking me, "Did you forget to do this? Did you forget to do that?" They just assumed that I had forgotten to do it, which I usually did. And I was possibly misdiagnosed with depression multiple times. Well, I had depression kind of go away and come back. And that's something I learned later on that people with women, especially with diagnosed with anxiety or depression, they go hand in hand. But really, the ADHD is the root cause of the depression or anxiety. And then people used to say to me, "I live in Andrea land." It's really funny to me now because I have about 200 women who live in Andrea land. Thank you. My transition. The bright side is that people with ADHD are actually really smart, really smart. ADHD is a neurodiversity, just like autism is. People, some of the minds in history have been autistic or ADHD because they think about things differently. So, who's in the kitchen? Sit wherever you like. And so, their brains simply learn things faster. They are able to absorb and process sensory information like a sponge. Their long-term memory is exceptional, not short-term, long-term memory. And because of the shortage of dopamine, their brains actually cancel out information that it deems worthless and take more for finding solutions. Geniuses and entrepreneurs with ADHD: Albert Einstein, Walt Disney, Andrew Carnegie, Sir Richard Branson. There's just a few names. There are women also. then, so people with ADHD are also 3 times more likely to start a business than the average person. That's because they want the freedom of their job. They've probably worked in places where they didn't like the rules, had trouble following them, had trouble showing up on time, had trouble organizing, all those things. They have lots of great ideas, and they always are thinking of ways for how to do things better. They're creative problem solvers. They have incredible empathy because they've struggled with a lot of things in their life. They're able to support people who have struggled with things. They're not afraid to take risks again and again and again because their whole life is a risk every day. They tend to focus on things that they're passionate about, which can be super valuable if you're on a deadline or launching a business or getting something moving really fast. They have a strong because people their entire lives have been pretending like it's okay that they're late. It's okay that they didn't get this thing cleaned. It's okay, it's fine. So they know. And they have impeccable intuition. They just have that gut feeling. They can really know. They're a sponge for interesting information between different things. They can be Jill or Jack of all trades, multi-skilled and multi-passionate. They're spontaneous and willing to take risks. They tend to be visionary. They're passionate about what they're into. If you think about it, every hyperfixation they've had, this tends to be like, if you like, oh, I'm all about the cricket machine. Everything for the cricket machine. I'm like, everything for all cousins that I ever do. And you buy it all, and you're like all about it for like a week, and that's the only thing you do for a week, and then you forget about it. And then you're like, oh my gosh, I'm all about this thing. Everything's a business idea. So every hyperfixation, business idea. Okay? And so they're always trying to they don't like stagnation, which is really good in business because it helps them progress their business faster. And they lack impulse control and dopamine, but with their great intuition, it means they can make really quick decisions. So, it's a good thing. So, you're probably wondering, like, okay, yeah, sure, that also actually channel that, because next. You probably used that term to describe yourself before if you think you are ADHD or think you might be. Big hot mess. It's just not true. You can channel it. So if you are struggling with something, any of those things we mentioned, the things on the table, if you're struggling with something, it's probably because you have unmet needs. So you're probably tired or hungry or lonely or any of like those biological human needs. So that's the first thing to figure out, what do I need? Because we tend to be so in the head that we forget about our bodies. It also might be that the task that you're trying to do is understimulating, boring, or down for you. So you can and trick your brain and make yourself want to do it. One way to do that is to celebrate, like do something that you love right before and then right after that. It kind of tricks your brain to associate that positive. It might be that this task is overwhelming for you or it has too many steps, so you can break them down. I'm a big fan of micro goals. So I think you guys have heard me say before, a goal is not make a website. A goal is buy a domain name. Like that's a step. Or your goal might be make a website, but task is not make a website. A task would be buy a domain name. Like achievable little things so you can feel that sense of accomplishment, because it's really hard for you to feel that if you have ADHD because of the dopamine. You never celebrate your successes from one to another. And so you need to give yourself moments to celebrate that. Dancing can give you dopamine, so even if you complete a task and get up and do a little dance, actually like looking at it and smiling can give you dopamine. There's lots of little things to do dopamine and help you move forward and build that momentum. And then the expectations for the task, and you don't know where to start. That one gets me oftentimes. I'm like, it's just overwhelming to me because I don't even know where to start. Maybe somebody's clean your room, and you're like, where do I start? You know, if you're dealing with a child that has ADHD, which if you have ADHD, your children are probably pretty likely to potentially have it. And often often when women find out they have ADHD is when they're taking their child in for diagnosis, and they're like, wait, that's ADHD? Oh, okay. And so a way to approach that with a child would be, I want you to go in your room and I want you to pick up all the clothes and put them in this basket. You know, you might have to kind of do some steps of like, what would be the first thing to do to keep your room clean. And then the last reason why you might be struggling with something is because it's triggering you or you have shame around it. You deal with a lot of shame around a lot of things. You've had this your whole life. And so maybe you have shame around the dishes because you struggle with those. Maybe you have shame around the laundry because you struggle with those. And so I say it's okay to ask for permission. That's what we give students in the classroom. When they have an official ADHD diagnosis, you give them accommodation. You let them do things a little differently than everyone else. For some reason, we think we're all going to get out into the real world and be totally okay without any accommodations. So an example of an accommodation and in the workplace might be somebody tells you something and you say, hey, can you shoot me that in an email or can you text that to me? And they're like, well, I just told you, like, why can't you just remember it? Well, do you want me to remember it or not? If you want to remember it, you need to message me. And so that's a very simple accommodation. They can just, okay, they told you, but they know to also send it to you. And so I'll often say that to people. I'm like, okay, please, just shoot right now while we're together, just shoot it to me. And other things like that. You know, I live by my calendar, and so having a calendar and having people book me calendar, keeping things consistent. You know, I have all my meetings pretty much at the hive unless like there's a very specific reason why I need to be there, because that just helps me time and you know where I'm going and feel prepared and things like that. And so make sure your family and friends understand ADHD so that they will be more supportive and have expectations of you. And you can simplify wherever possible. So reduce unnecessary stresses and commitments. And so just things this way doesn't mean that you have to in your house, it might look different. I know people who they put their silverware instead of in a silverware drawer, they get on the counters. And I don't know. I'm just thinking like, what could you change around your house? Like I've heard of people that are like, I don't fold laundry. I just put it in the drawer that it goes in. Everybody in the house, and I put it in the drawer. They want to fold laundry, but it's just going in the drawer, you know, in that house. And so finding different like workarounds that make sense for you, because your whole life is probably follow the typical people, and they're like, well, just make a list and just, you know, set a timer or whatever. But you've got to do things differently and find out what works for you. Negotiate with your family to take on what's challenging for you. And so I talked with my boyfriend and I was like, you know what? I totally don't mind loading the dishwasher. Like, that's super easy for me. If the dishwasher is like, I know what's in it, it's empty, I can load the dishes, no problem. But like, I cannot load them if it's clean. And I have a really hard time putting away dishes. If it won't get done, if the dishes in the clean, it's too many steps. It's too much for me. It's overwhelming. And so it's his job to put away the dishes every night before bed, so that the next day I can just know I can just add stuff on, and then at the end of the day it's super easy for me to just finish it up, load it, run it, and then you know. So just little things like that. Like it's okay to ask help if that task really is hard for you. It's hard for the other people in your family that you don't mind doing. So, and then working with a coach to develop organizational habits and systems can be huge. Have awesome coaches in the hive that have experience working with people with ADHD who can help you set up different strategies that for you. And then the other one is to not be afraid of work. A lot of people will say, like, I don't have the budget for that, or I can't afford to do that. My rebuttal to that would be like, you can't afford not to. Because if you are dropping the ball and you're going to do too much, that's not good for you either. And so, you know, I know that there's usually a way to find the budget for it, and once you have it in place, like you're just, people tend to inflate their lifestyles with their income and then end up having the same problems they had when they made less money. So there's always a way. And coaching, our lunch sponsor, is for that. One thing I did 100% because of my ADHD is because when I took on the role of president of the association for the building, I said, I'm not taking on this role unless we hire Kristen to be like our executive manager and whatnot. Because tasks that I know I will jot through the whole, and I didn't tell them that, like, why. I was just like, I won't take a position unless you, and so we looked at it and figured it out, and we did, right? And now, anytime there's a building task, like not a Hive task, but a building task, I just shoot a text or email to Kristen. She is super organized. She has systems in place and, follow through and all of that. And so I can trust that if I send something to her, it's going to get taken care of. Because once it's out of sight, I'm not ADHD people typically. It's not in my world anymore. There's now and there's not now. Those are the two time frames. And so even if you, have a personal assistant, I think it's like 5 hours a month, and you can kind of spread that out over what you need, or maybe you need somebody to come in and like organize part of your house. Like I have one of our other high in my house, and she every now and then I'll be like, hey, can you spend an extra hour on Tuesday? I'll pay you for an extra hour to like organize my kitchen. Yeah, right? Hey, can I pay you a little extra hour and you can like organize the mess in my closet? So people with ADHD have what's called doom piles. That's what that's called. So like you have piles of things that you're gonna get to. I'm gonna get to it, and that's why it's here. Or like here's my pile of things. You have piles.
Get thrown in piles.
Yeah. So you can have somebody help you deal with your doom pile. Another good strategy is to use what's called body doubling. Have you ever noticed that when you're over at your house, like suddenly you get up and you start like cleaning your kitchen, or you like start organizing your living room and putting stuff away? It's because there's another body, and for some reason you're able, like that's able to motivate you or pull energy from it or something like that. So body doubling is great. You can also use the strategy over, because I'm sure you all everybody does this, even not ADHD people, but like I'm inviting somebody over on, for dinner on Friday. I gotta have the house clean by Friday, so I'm like, that's my deadline. You give yourself time. And then on TikTok, this guy has his friend like pick a random time in the month, and he calls him and he's like, hey dude, is it okay? And he's like, right now? He's like, yeah. Okay, yeah. And like then he cleans his whole house, and then he calls him and he's like, hey, I thought you were coming over. He's like, oh no. You just told me to like call you. You guys coming over. Yeah, one more partner trick is you can tell your partner, hey, would it be okay if you don't do the right thing? So like, or I don't know, whatever your person does. It would be okay if you don't do that thing until I've done this thing. And then guess what? They're like, and then it also feels like you're getting to like reward them, for you doing the thing. It's like a positive thing. So they like want you to do your thing, and then they don't feel shame around it. So I thought that was a strategy as well. So the big thing is to really identify what you're good at and what you're bad at, and then make a plan that lets you use your strengths and delegate or manage your weaknesses. That's been my secret since starting a business. Is like I know what I'm good at and I own it, and I try to spend as much time there as possible. And I try to outsource or use different resources for the things that I'm not great at. And instead of shaming myself over not being great at those things, I just know that I'm really good at these things, and that's where I'm super grateful to the people who helped me feel. And then the other thing is that you have to redefine your baseline. So here's what happens with people with ADHD. So this is what period. So say like this is your productivity level. So you have 0 to 10. So productivity level would be 5, right? level. So when you're hyper focusing and you're like on it, you're at a 10. And then you think that that's what you should be at all the time. Like you're like at 10, so like I should be at 10. So then when you're at a 5, you feel like a failure. So when you're anything below a 10, you feel like a failure. That's actually way more than most. Like your 10 is like insane for other people. Like you probably heard other people say like, oh my God, how did you get all that time? Wow, how did you do that? And secretly inside you're like, you don't know. Like I only sometimes can do that. Like I'm a sham. And they're like, it doesn't matter. So what you do is you go to the 10 and it's like, then you drop because you've exerted yourself out. And then maybe you do it again, and then because you've done it so frequently, like then you're like down here. You might stay down here for a while. You feel really crappy about yourself, right? Like I can't do anything. But like imagine that these 10s are like sprinting. Like you're sprinting. And if you're trying to be a long distance runner, you're sprint until the last teeny little bit of the race. The very beginning of the race and the very end of the race is when you sprint. Everything else, slow and steady, slow and steady. You're like literally, as you cross the finish, like you kind of giggle at the people who are like still sprinting like a mile in. You're like, haha, I'll be passing you and you'll be long gone, you know, because they're wasting all their energy. You've like wasted all your energy and completely dead. And so if you can kind of like redefine what the baseline is, and then when you catch yourself going to a 10, you're like, you know what? Or I'm gonna stop, and I'm going to come back and like maybe I'll be a 6 or 7 tomorrow also, or like a 5, you know. And so if you can keep yourself from spiking all the way up and staying up till 2 a.m. or 4 a.m. working on something, then you can kind of keep yourself closer to that baseline, which is appropriate. Now you think that like you need to be at 10. Your employer and your friends and your family, they don't need you at the 10. They need you at the 5, because what happens if you go to the 10, then they're not going to have you at the 5. They're going to have you here, and that sucks. Except for you, including yourself. And so you can go above the norm every now and then and still impress people, because like your 6 is just like better than most people. So that's kind of just a reminder there. And then also drop your unrealistically high standards. Your new mantra when you're down like this is not I'm lazy, I'm just recharging, okay? Because you completely like killed yourself and now you're recharging. So just remember that. And just remember also it is an asset when you are doing something that you love, because that gets you that dopamine hit that you don't have. And that's why it's so important to do what you're passionate about. And you also need to lean into your unique brain. So when you're like doing life on your terms with the way the brain works, that is when you're going to be using it as an asset and being successful. And then when you have motivating support, so don't surround yourself with people like my ex-husband who shame you constantly. The thing they ask when you walk in the door is, did you forget to do this? Like literally before a hello, before a kiss, anything, every day. Did you forget to do this? Did you forget to do this? Can we do this, right? Like, don't surround yourself with people. If you have people that you cannot get rid of that are like that, you still go to therapy, okay? You still like work on some of their trauma, because they obviously don't want enough to love you. And then you have to be willing to do things differently. What works for other people is not going to work for you. Being productive and they want to figure out your own way of doing it. When your business reflects your lifestyle and your personality, I typically don't take meetings before, like definitely not before 10 a.m. Do it. Do you know why? Because I've been late to so many meetings in my life and things that were before 10 a.m. So I own my own business. I don't have to take meetings if I don't want to. And I also try to leave bigger gaps between my meetings, because I used to run them back to back, and I tend to be in the moment with somebody. Like, this person is the only person in the world right now. And so like I'm gonna run over time. And so leave gaps for yourself to take a breather. Leave gaps for yourself to have lunch. I didn't have lunch yesterday. True ADHD style. I did not have lunch yesterday. still planning and working on it. I still don't always follow my own advice, but we also kind of get a high off that hyper focus, right? And then trust your intuition. You know, this. There have been so many times, you guys, where I have an intuition about something. I'm crazy. Like, no, this is fine. No, it'll be okay. Like, it's fine. And it was not. It was not fine. Every single time, you guys, every single time I have a gut feeling or an intuition, even if the person seems like awesome, it always comes true. Like, always. So more so than a person, people with ADHD can trust their gut and their intuition. So now if I'm, you know, I'm feeling something, like, and it also kind of like a little bit more too, like if I get into traffic on my way somewhere, I think there must be a reason. There must be a reason that I'm not supposed to be there. And I surround myself with people who understand. People with ADHD tend to lose friendships a lot of the time because a lot of times, especially women, they expect you to be super thoughtful and call them on their birthdays and birthday cards. Your mother-in-law expects you, not her son, to remember all the birthdays and everything. They expect you to, you know, just like and be on time and the things that ADHD people struggle with. It's not that they don't care. It's not that they don't want to be there for you. It's just that they are very present in the moment that they're in. When the moment is with you, they're going to be very present about them, right? And that's why they make such awesome friends, because they really do genuinely care about you and will absolutely do anything for you that you think you're going to have to, like, ask them to. And they're like, yes, I will totally do that for you. Yes, I will come pick you up. Where are you? 2 hours away? I got you. I got you. You know, scheduled it. Didn't put it in the calendar, and you're expecting me to be there to pick you up, might be a problem. You just might need to accept that that's not the kind of friend I am. And so, yeah. So I actually, I lost friends early on when I was in high school. When somebody would get me like a I was like, oh shit. Okay. Or if they like, you know, would text me to check in on me or like call me at like regular intervals and things, I'd be like, okay. Like I just feel like you're gonna be disappointed in me. Like I think that's super sweet, but like, are you expecting that back from me? Because like, you know, I have trouble with that kind of stuff. And so to kind of surround myself with people who are more similar to me, because they tend to totally be okay with it. Like my best friend and I, she's totally ADHD. We talk like maybe once every 2 to 3 months, and we both forget each other's birthdays, and we both forget things, and we never, you know, send thoughtful gifts. But like when we're together, we all love each other, and we will like, you know, buy each other, you know, go shopping and buy each other something, or be super thoughtful in that moment, because we're very in the moment with each other. And so I just learned to surround myself like that, and it helps because people are 3 times more likely to be entrepreneurs, so there's a lot of people like that in the house. So it tends to be okay, but just be okay with like letting go of people that you don't understand. Now, you know, obviously we don't want to be chronically late to things, or, you know, be totally thoughtless and totally forgetful. What I think, not to do that, not to just be like totally like, I have ADHD, like I'm like sorry I have ADHD, sorry I like forgot your birthday, I have ADHD. It's to put systems in place for you so you can and like, you know, put your life and your business in a way that helps hone into your strengths so that you stop having those mishaps. So like if it's happened to you, figure out how to make it not happen in the future. Not happen in the future. What I'm talking about is weed out of your life the people who, when you are doing your very best and you are really trying to even be better, and you're trying to, and they're still giving you a hard time, and they're still critical, and they're still shaming you and still making you feel bad, like let it go. They are not for you. Like we have people that are type A if they don't understand, if they don't give us grace and compassion. And so, you know, have conversations with people in your life that you cannot cut the cord on because they're family or friends, and just see if they're willing to help you come with a strategy that will work for you so that you can both be happy, because you both want to be happy in your friendship. And then guide your hyper focus. Let yourself take well thought out risks. Like, it's okay to take risks, but obviously think about them a little bit. And then guide your hyper focus. So you have hyper focus times, like, make it move towards something. And then learn and hone the rhythm that works for you, and then channel your excitement and passion to others. You're really good at practicing and developing resources that can help you and others be successful. So, like, lean into that skill, because you love resources and information, both to you and to the people in your life. So these are some ways to kind of channel it. And then if you are undiagnosed, but you think you have ADHD, you can do a self-test. There's a link in the event on Facebook or on Mighty Networks. We, as women, even as adults, like, you have to study yourself when you're going to get a diagnosis, because most psychologists are just not, they just are not aware really of, like, presents in women versus men. Specifically for women by, I believe that woman I quoted, like, helped put together this test. And I, to being diagnosed, I didn't randomly, but I did know that you had to go in and say, like, how it manifested as a child. Because if it did not manifest as a child, then it's not super stressed, or you might have to do something else. And so, but reading over this test, I pulled some of those quotes from the table from this test, and I felt like, whoa, this would have been super helpful. And for girls also, like younger girls, which I can get you if you're interested in. And I was going to have Sarah pull it up on the screen just so you can kind of see 8 pages. My diagnosis, I just went to my family doctor and told her I think I have ADHD. It was actually an ex-boyfriend that he kind of identified it in me. He was like, I was like, what are you talking about? Like, I'm not a hyperactive little boy. And he was like, no, here's reasons. Like, here's these things that you do that I think you might. And I was like, huh, like a lot of people do, researching on myself. And I was like, uh-oh. Yeah. And so I did read a lot of articles and things like that. And I took it into my family doctor, and I was like, I think I might have ADHD because of X, Y, and Z. And she's like, okay. So she referred me to a psychiatrist. He took me through 6 different tests, and like I had to click on the computer and listen to something, and it was all super stressful. And then it came back to get on Adderall. I'm not a doctor, but I can say that from my personal experience, it was life-changing for me. I don't feel like some people like they lose their ADHD positive traits when they're on Adderall. I don't feel that way. I feel like I can still hyper-focus when I need to. It helps me do. When I first got on the medication, I made a to-do list, and then I just checked it off because it's the same as on the list. Yeah, and I was like, is this how normal people live? You just say you want to do it, and there's not all the like mental drama and all of the like physical exhaustion and all of the just like stuff, the extra stuff to do anything. And I remember, people saying like, oh yeah, I totally, like, sometimes I don't want to do this or laundry either. I'm like, no, I want to. Like, it's not that I don't want to. Like, there are times I don't want to, but like, in this moment, I actually want to. I can't, and I don't know why. I just can't make myself do it. So on Adderall, I'm just like, I'm gonna do the dishes, and then I just go do them. I just go do the dishes because I want to. I do the dishes, and I don't do the dishes, and it's not good. So that's been a big thing for me, and also that exhaustion that I mentioned that I have in my life, just That's gone. And I can actually wake up in the morning now. So that was another lifelong struggle for me. I really struggled to get out of bed in the morning. Like I would wake up and I just like kind of have to hit snooze a million times and just like really struggle to get up, and then I would be running late, right? So that has helped. It's not perfect. And the thing is that it doesn't be like you struggle with executive dysfunction. Means you struggle with executive function skills that you have to develop. So ADHD kept you from being to develop those skills very well or at all. And so if you get on medication, you don't suddenly have organizational skills, suddenly have time management skills, or have all other things. You still have to develop those skills, but what I found is that it actually allows me to begin the work of developing those skills. So you know, right now I'm be like, she totally like not helping her, like she still has a lot of struggles. Yes, I do still have a lot of struggles, but I feel totally capable now of like working through building the skills so that I can be I don't feel like at a loss, like why am I this way? Now medications not for everybody, and there are a lot of natural ways to help, and for some people it does affect them negatively, or they do feel like it takes away their ability to hyper focus or have you know, some of their favorite things about ADHD. Just personally, case for me, they did take me off losing weight, and that was really difficult for me. They put me on a non-stimulant, which I hated. It made me super irritable. I was really irritable. Like I was really like I would get like tense and upset with people, like my family, personal family, and I would. And it just was very irritable. And I was exhausted again. And so I found a medication that they give to typically little boys who have ADHD and are losing and it's great sometimes for some people. And so there's this medication that's like an allergy medication. And so I asked my doctor, would it be okay if I get that and try ADHD or try. She said yes, and that's worked for me. So I have appetite now, and that's what Adderall was happy about. So if you're interested in that's the sort of it took away your appetite or whatever, I can let you know what I told my doctor. And then again, special thanks to Martin Pringle for the technology, to ICT Lifestyle Management for review for creating our delicious meal. Did you guys enjoy the food?
Yes.
Awesome. And then a couple things I want to say real quick. I'm going to pop up here and tell you a little bit about what ICT Lifestyle Management is. Like I said, I use her personally, well, I use her professionally, or team building, and also considering hiring her for my managing my Airbnb stuff too, personally. And she's been awesome. I would say that the thing that's like just hiring a personal assistant, like a college student, you know, do things for you or something like that, is she's, you know, an adult woman who has lots of skill and expertise and experience, you know, more help. And I can tell you from experience when I have hired more like the in college, fresh out of college person or somebody who's not skilled in these areas, balls are, and then you're going to independently research. You can't necessarily always trust somebody at that level of their career to make really high level decisions about like vendors or about, you know, like negotiating a bid or something like that. So I really trust her with all those things that I love. And then Morgan is also around to get a little video of us staging the workshop room upstairs. So if you want to be like, please, I think it fits and an instructor, like 12 of you, to pretend like we just did this lunch and learn upstairs in the workshop room. That would be awesome. And then anybody who has a few minutes to do a quick little, she's going to ask some questions about like, what do you love about the Hive, or you know, why do you join the Hive in the first place, things like that. We're just updating our website and some of our social media. I also encourage you guys to stay on because we have such an awesome group here today, which I'm super happy about. Our intention this year moving forward is fewer, right? So like quality over quantity can be a lot of different options. I've done that because people were always like, well, I can't do that time, or I can't do that time. I wish you had an event like this. I wish you had an event that can't fit everybody, right? And if they want to be, right. So that's kind of what we're moving forward to. I'm gonna let Kristen pop up real quick and talk with us for just a couple minutes, and we'll do the video stuff for anybody that wants to. Do you want to stand like right here, Kristen? They can see you on the camera.
Absolutely.
Thank you, guys.
Well, thank you. So interesting and helpful. I love working with you. Thank you for asking me to sponsor this. I felt like it was such a good fit because I work with overwhelmed business owners, and that's kind of like entrepreneurs. And so we're juggling, and it's hard enough to be a female entrepreneur without ADHD. So when you add that on top, I think this makes a lot of sense. One of the things I do initially is have them break down. I just write down everything that is on their mind, and then I help them kind of identify the things that bring them joy that they want to keep, and then what we can implicate, and my passion for taking tasks off of their desks so that they can be the best person and business owner and wife and daughter and mother that they have to be. I would love to kind of explore further, but I also put business cards out on the table, and I have my website there. We're on social at ICT. Thank you guys so much.
Thank you. Cool. Well, if anybody that wants to be our student